Hey, Bjorn. Knew you'd be the first one on. As usual, quick on the trigger finger. How are you this Friday afternoon? Good, not so good, bad. Bjorn. I think Bjorn has a bot that just comes in and says hello first, and then it like leaves for 5 minutes, comes back and asks about funding, and then it leaves and then reiterates the question like 30 minutes in or something. No, you're not a bot, but I think you have a bot. There's a Bjorn bot that just is there to knock in the first hello. Then you take over at some point, you know. But. All right, we'll give a few minutes here. Let's people post a link into Telegram. I am in Florida, actually, so I'm in the US, bright and early here. Had some calls starting around 7 a.m. and it's roughly 8 a.m. now. Yeah, it's a balcony in Florida. So okay, yeah, I'm not quite in Tampa, but I'm close. Tennis in Tampa. It's quite humid weather for tennis. Definitely not good for grass courts. So. Morning, Stubble and Stout. So I'm just going to give it, as I try to get situated here, we'll give people maybe 2-3 minutes to make themselves available here, and then we'll get rolling. So funding is in progress, guys. We're in a documentation phase right now. Agreements, due diligence, screening, all that good stuff. That process started about a week ago, and we have an aim to close in another week to maybe 10 days. So we're working on it. Yeah, we just had a discussion about that, Andre. I said that I think Bjorn has a bot. I don't think he's a bot. I think he has a bot that just makes sure he's in here first with the first hello, and then usually 2 to 3 minutes later, maybe 5 minutes max, it's news on funding. And then I think he takes over on the bot maybe 10 minutes in or something like that. But yeah, he's quite fast on the trigger. So maybe he just has some type of monitoring software inside my computer. Any news on punting? So sitting in the U.S., punting would be what they do after, when you can't get convert a fourth down, you have to punt. Yeah, I would say that, like I just said, if you're talking about funding or investing, basically someone investing in us, we're going through paperwork stage right now with a group of investors, and we expect that to finalize in the next week or so. But we're in documentation phase, means agreement signing, means due diligence documentation, proof of funds, source of funds, all that good stuff. So all that's being worked on now. All right, guys, I think we can officially start in 30 seconds. How about that? We'll give another 30 seconds for people to roll in, then we'll get rolling. At some point here, I think we're going to have to establish this like a specific starting time rather than me starting at some weird time and then waiting a few minutes. Florida. So I'm in the U.S. for 2 weeks. I have a few meetings, and then the rest is me and my kids and my wife spending some time with the family. Hey, Brian, how are you? Brazilians are still there. They're just kind of lukewarm. I think once we close this round with these current investors, the Brazilians will become slightly warmer again and probably will come back to the table. A lot of times when you do fundraising, nobody wants to be the first guy in. They like to see another fund jump in, and then they're like, oh, well, this guy went in. So, and that's usually how it goes, and the dominoes start to fall. So I think the Brazilians, at least some of the Brazilians in the initial group, had a bit of cold feet because they were the first larger ticket. So, all right, guys. So let's start. So, for those of you, can you show the view from the window? It's not actually a nice view. It's just a little canal, but I'll show a little later, Andre. So anyway, let's get started. And for those of you who haven't never joined us, I am Kevin Murcko, CEO here at CoinMetro. This is something we call This Week in Crypto. Basically, I sit here wherever I am. This week, I'm actually not in the office where I usually am, but wherever I happen to be, I sit down for an hour. I go over some market news initially, 10 pieces of market news that were curated by great guys and gals in our elite Telegram group. And then after I do about a 1-minute speech, little opinion on each of those news stories. Then from there, we jump into Kevin Explains Crypto. Every week there's a term or a phrase that's voted on by our community, and I define it as in layman terms, as let's say as easily as I can. So people who don't necessarily are new to crypto, or maybe just never heard of some of these words that get thrown around, we try to help them out with the definition. And then we jump into live Q&A. That's here on YouTube, which is probably this way on the screen, maybe. And we also have some Reddit questions that were curated as well over the last week. Time permitting, I'll get to those as well. So let's get started with market news. By the way, just so everybody knows, blockslive.tv is picking up the show. So every Monday you can see a retaping or a non-live, I think it's live for that. Let's get rolling into market news. So Bittrex International halts, this is number 1 of 10, guys. Bittrex International halts service in Venezuela and 30 more countries. So we've been talking, we talk a lot about compliance, regulation, KYC, all those great and wonderful terms on this show every week. And I've been saying for almost 2 years now, I think since our first AMA session, that very soon you are going to start to see these unregulated exchanges start to put the brakes on many things that they're doing, because they're going to get more heat from national and international regulators. And I think, and I don't know this for sure, but we started to see a pattern between the more, let's say, the larger of the unregulated institutions, your Binances, your Bittrexes, your Bitfinexes, your et cetera. We've started to see a trend where these guys have quickly started to change the way they do business. And I think that's more than likely because the U.S. is probably start to send letters. They send these nice little letters in the mail that basically say, you're in violation. You need to change. You have 30 days. If not, blah, 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 blah. Those letters can be quite scary, especially if you've never seen one before. They can be quite threatening as well. So I do think we started to see at least that phase. Why the SEC in the U.S. is starting to go through this let's prosecute and get judicial precedent phase like they're doing now. On several sides. And now that we're starting to see lawsuits come in and things like that, judicial precedent is starting. And as that's starting, they're starting to fish. Bittrex maybe got caught up in that fish net, or they simply understood that they needed to stop servicing countries that were on OFAC or FAFT sanction lists because it simply put a large spotlight onto them. So not really surprising, but it's a good sign overall for the market. It means the market is starting to clean itself up. Self-governance is always the best governance. The problem is you can't self-govern when no one does anything that's considered to be, the right way in an industry. So we need people to actually start acting the right way, and then self-governance can kick in. And if we do self-governance correctly, we might not need more stricter application of regulation. Number 2 on the list of 10, report low-quality crypto exchanges still run the show. Yeah, I would say that's 100% accurate. The retail market and the institutional market in crypto is very underserved. Prices are high, service sucks. And that's obviously one of the USPs that we try to push, is the fact that our service doesn't suck and our prices are not high. So obviously a bit of marketing budget after this fundraising round will help us get that message out to more people. But in contrast, I would say in retail markets in general around the world, whether you're talking about FX, equities, bond, whatever, not really bonds, not many equity, not many retail bond markets, but in terms of all retail sector and finance, it sucks. Crypto isn't alone there. I mean, banks suck, credit card companies suck in terms of their customer service, in terms of how you have to reach their customer service, in terms of the answers you get. they mostly suck. So hopefully crypto will change that, but it's definitely something we can use to our advantage as CoinMetro, because I believe in those two areas we don't suck. Number 3 on the list of 10, FATF regulations will push criminal activity to privacy coins, CipherTrace CEO. I think this, I don't know who the CipherTrace CEO is, but look, we always have this argument, right? In terms of AML, anti-money laundering, right? You could say pretty convincingly that current AML regulations, current AML implementation of regulations around the world really doesn't work all that well, because a whole ton of money is laundered every day. And you'd be right. But if we didn't have those measures in place, it would be worse. That's for sure. So while what is done, let's say, what is usually done in traditional markets in terms of AML, while it isn't perfect, it does deter some criminal activity, which at the end of the day is a good thing. We need to make that system better. Blockchain may be a solution to make it better. Maybe it's not. But having some type of ID on a blockchain that you can use in multiple areas and that's instantly verifiable without actually seeing your data is probably something that the blockchain can do to better the way that we interact online with regulated services. We're not there yet. The end of the day is that privacy coins, look, it's pretty easy to suffocate a privacy coin, right? You can say you can't stop a protocol and you'd be right? Theoretically, you can't stop the protocol. If it exists out there, somebody can use it, whether it's, you're not supposed to, whatever, somebody will use it. But the amount of people that will use it when it is completely cut off from funding capabilities, meaning, yeah, maybe you have a lot of cash that you want to get on a privacy coin, or maybe you receive a privacy coin, and now what do you do with it? Because if no retail establishments will accept it, if it's highly scrutinized, and they really do start to track and trace and try to break those chains, and you have governments like the CIA and things like that trying to do that, eventually, maybe it's still anonymous or it becomes pseudo-anonymous, but it's not going to be a great place for criminals, because they're going to have no way really to get money in and out. And they may accept it between them. Maybe you'll have like the Escobar coin, I don't know, where drug dealers around the world accept it. But what do they do with it? They can't cash out. They can't get any funds. They can't buy anything with it. No one's going to touch it. So I think that's ridiculous. I think that statement is ridiculous, and it comes from either a lack of understanding or somebody simply trying to get some PR. Number 4 on a list of 10, Trade.io halts trading amidst market slowdown, cites unfavorable market conditions and rising infrastructure costs as contributing to the decision. So we've talked about this as well. Many exchanges that are exchange only are going to run into an issue because, well, market conditions, look, whether it's a bear market, a bull market, whatever, there is constantly influx and outflux of money in any market. And you can make money, whether it's bear, bull, whether price is up or down, whether sentiment is up or down. There's still going to be people either buying or selling, and well, buying and selling, obviously. So what this probably coded message actually means is regulatory costs are coming up. The ability for them to charge higher rates is lessening, and now they have lower commission fees and higher costs. So obviously, game over. Again, this is why it's important to have many revenue sources that isn't just based on commission trading, spot trading, because commission spot trading is not a huge revenue generator. You need additional sources of revenue. That's why we structured ourselves the way we did. Number 5 on the list of 10, the number of Americans owning crypto has doubled in 2019. So that sounds pretty cool, though it was pretty small to begin with. So doubling, it's like, you have 1 penny, now you have 2. Big deal. Obviously, if you continue that effect from 1 penny, I think within like 30 or 60 days, you're the richest person in the world. I forget the amount of days. I think it's like 47 days or something like that. But the doubling effect can have a huge impact over time. 1 double, not so much. But what it shows is obviously there's more awareness. And a lot of that awareness comes, to be honest, from bad press. Because like they say, no press is bad press, right? Well, bad press has been much more prevalent around Bitcoin and crypto in general, but it still gets into people's households. They still hear about it. They go and research about it. They find blogs and websites and start reading about it. So, that mainstream kind of awareness of crypto is definitely growing. The price point might not be growing, but the awareness is growing. So that's good. Number 6 on the list of 10, president of Crypto Capital arrested in alleged money laundering operation. So for those of you who don't know, Crypto Capital was essentially a company that provided like PSP, payment service payment services between large crypto exchanges that couldn't get bank accounts, which is Bitfinex, Binance used them, but I think Bitfinex was probably their biggest client. I think they're probably have some connection to Bitfinex. Arrested, yeah, because they basically, they're the guys that supposedly froze the 850 million that Bitfinex had, and then they went and did a 1 billion token sale to cover it up. There's definitely some cohesion there and between those two companies, that's for sure. So yeah, this guy's in a lot of hot water. They found him. I think they found him so that they can give him immunity or close to it, so they can get the actual people behind the entire scheme, where you're talking about Noble Bank, Bitfinex, Tether, all those guys. And I think they're basically putting together a racketeering, like a racketeering charge, right? So it's like a mafia case. They get all the little guys in first. They offer them deals. They testify against people. They give names. I think that's what they're doing. Number 7 on list 10, Bakkt plans to launch Bitcoin futures options in December. I don't see a big future for Bitcoin futures. I think right now these futures and options and things like that are tasty for some, because they don't have to, get a private key and figure out key storage and the hardware wallets and all this nonsense. The future of crypto will not involve any of these things, because individuals are not going to walk around with a ledger wallet, understanding what their private key is with seed phrases. That will never lead to mass adoption. Be the same thing like when you had baud modems and you needed to understand how to connect from a DOS prompt to get on the internet. No one would be on the internet right now. I mean, you wouldn't be sitting from your smartphone connected via, an RJ11 or whatever jack, and then sitting there and DOS prompting into the internet, right? We would never be there. We'd never be where we are today. So all this will get easier, which means there won't be any, which means we're kind of going to go being able to connect. Only a few people could connect, the blah, 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 blah. When you get into mass adoption though, people give up freedoms and they give up privacy for ease of use. That always happens. That's how adoption works, guys. So what'll happen with crypto is that forget hardware wallets, forget private keys, forget about this whole